Ministry, it is my distinguished pleasure to stand before you today, giving honor to God, who is the head of my life, giving honor to the pastor of this house, who has granted this opportunity, to the ministers of this house, to all you who have assembled. I am deeply grateful that you have come to share with us today. Being in good Baptist fashion, I won't hold you long, but I'll hold you tight. Okay? So if you have your Bible, would you stand with me if you're able for the book of Daniel. Book of Daniel, chapter 3, and we are going to hang out in the first 12 verses for a little while. The book of Daniel, chapter 3, and we're going to hang out in the first 12 verses or so. And the text reads from the NIV, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He summoned all the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. So the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Then Herod loudly proclaimed, "This is what you are commanded to do, O peoples, nations, and men of every language. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that the king has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into blazing furnace." Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshiped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. At this time, some astrologers came forward denouncing the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You have issued a decree, O king, that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, pipes of all kinds of music, must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, O king. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. Would you bow your head for a word of prayer? Gracious Lord, we are grateful that you have assembled us for the purpose of getting closer to you. Allow that our time be one that is filled with transition as we grow from one place to another, as we open up our hearts and minds to receive what you have for us today. We ask these things in the mighty, matchless, and miraculous name of your Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen. My sister and brother, for the time that's ours, I'd like to share this thought with you. Simply, it's called the power of protest. The power of protest. There seemed to be a mess in Mesopotamia. As one kingdom rose, another kingdom fell, and the condition of those brown-skinned Hebrews was left vacillating in between. It seems now that at the time of this text, Nebuchadnezzar has become the king and emperor of Babylon. Babylon, as it tries to congeal its power locally and expand its power from a territorial standpoint, Babylon sought to bring in those Hebrews from the margins and integrate them into dominant society. So the plan was we're going to take the brightest and the best of those Hebrews and indoctrinate them, inculcate them, or quote unquote educate them in the ways of empire. And for those who are able to master these lessons of empire, to administrate the affairs of the king, they will be given riches and access, opportunities that their sisters and brothers back at home were not able to realize. Now, this empire was led by a king who was known for his boastful intentions, a king who spent his time and money on grandiose feats of ego, who castigated those who believed in other gods and did not hold people equally in his kingdom. It seems as if the words of what King Solomon said are true in this day, for there is nothing new under the sun. It's interesting that as empires sought to inculcate these people, bring them into a knowledge that would make them like their oppressors, there was a mechanism to do it. This mechanism is likened unto the research of B.F. Skinner or Ivan Pavlov, one in which people are influenced by external stimuli to produce behavioral responses that lead them in ways in which may be counter to their best intentions. So the king says, in order for me to hold power, I've got to have some music for my reign. My propaganda needs a jingle so that people can sing my song. My sisters and brothers, oftentimes the biblical text is seen as one that just gives moral absolutes about what we should and shouldn't do. But let us never forget that the biblical text is a book that is full of military science and a book of political science, a book that gives us the ways in which power is negotiated in the world. Not just how we pray for power, but how power is actually acquired in this world. So now the question becomes, this music that the king says everyone must capitulate to. This music, this same sound in which all the people, judges, kings, bishops, potentates, all important people, all people who are under the sound and under the jurisdiction of this king must then capitulate their will to the playing of this song. No matter what you're doing, you must stop and give homage to this golden image, this idol that's made by the hands of men. Now it seems as if music would be a foregone conclusion, but it seems that music continues to crop up in our nation's conversation. It seems that when a certain song is played in this country, people begin to function in some hypnotic trance, as if they are unaware of the outside world. When this song comes on, you're supposed to stop what you're doing and give reference and reverence to something that was made by man's hands. You're supposed to sublimate your overarching perspectives for the perspectives of the empire at the sound of the music. It seems as some young brothers find themselves in trouble because the hypnosis of that song does not allow them to snap out of the reality in which their people are still oppressed. Now, before I'm accused of playing partisan politics, I want to share with you that this song that radiates through our nation and through our theological discourse, this song of distraction, this song of misinformation, unfortunately, is being shared and sung by our own people. Now, I am a huge hip-hop head. I bought the tapes when they were tapes. Don't let me date myself. I had the records when they were records. I spent my little money on the CDs when it was on CD. And now I just download the music on my whatchamacallit. But unfortunately, it seems that the artists that we support with our music are singing songs of death and destruction and misogyny, hypnotizing our people into a sleep-like state in which we are unable to distinguish reality from fiction. I'm going to talk about it. So it's interesting that we have this dilemma between the conscious rapper, right? If you talk about anything of substance, if you have something to say about the socio-political dynamics of our world, you're considered conscious. Conscious means to be awake, to be about one's senses. Well, the question I would pose to the music industry would be this. Well, if certain artists are conscious, then what is the rest of the music? Has it become that our songs of the cotton field, our songs of the barroom, our songs that sustained us have now become songs of our oppression, operating as a way of population control as we kill each other and demean each other in such a way in which we can't grow together as people under the sound of the music? I'm concerned, my sisters and brothers, that many of us, though we function as if we're conscious, we are still capitulating to the songs that seek to hypnotize our minds and keep us ensnared in the oppression of dominant society. I'm concerned. So how do we break this slow hypnosis, this low-grade hypnosis in which certain images and certain themes are presented before us with frightening speed and with lasting impact? The text says these young men would hear the music, but they would protest. Protest being a way of breaking the hypnotic suggestion. Because protest says that though I may not be in control of all the things around me, I am in control of my mind and my body. And with my mind and my body functioning as one, whatever's being placed upon me can't hold me unless I hold the thing that's being placed upon me. So protest becomes a way in which these gentlemen find the strength to break the hypnosis that occurs from the music that emanates from the egotistical reign of one who holds himself even above God's self. May I talk with you? So now, these gentlemen protest. But my question is this: if protest has some biblical corollary, if protest is part of how a Protestant nation understands itself, for at the root of Protestant is the word protest. Because the Protestants, through the work of Martin Luther, broke away from the Catholic Church in protest. So how can a nation built on protest, may I cite the Boston Tea Party, a nation that's built on protest, a nation that continues to protest when its rights aren't granted, how does it then frown upon people who try to engage in the same right for their own liberation and the furtherance of their own in this place. I'm confused about why people are confused about why we need to protest. Protesting is fine as long as you don't protest me. But what happens when our protesting breaks the hypnotic suggestion that happens even in the midst of our sporting situations? The main place where good folks come to unwind and unplug from the world. These gentlemen in the text, Shadrach, Meshach, and as the old preacher would say, in a bad Negro. How does Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego realize something that we should realize today, that protest is powerful? It's powerful, number one, because it's politically powerful. These gentlemen said, "O king, we can't bow to this. We can't bow because if we capitulate politically to your actions, we set a bad precedent for our people. Because of where we're grouped in terms of class, a world apart from our people back home. So if we capitulate to your idolatry, then we tell the people back home that it's okay to dance to the king's dance and sing the king's song, not questioning the deep psychological, spiritual, and existential impact of such a dance. They understood that our bodies become a form of protest to show that our people are not fully disempowered, but as long as we have control of ourselves, we have control of our future. Now, is there anybody here who has come to realize that a person who can't control themselves has no bearing on their future? So when you get a group of people who are self-determined to say, I'm not going to take this, and if I take it, then the people who are dependent on me not to take it will take it. I can rest with their blood on my hands, knowing that I've sold out, not made a compromise, but I sold out so I can hold a little piece of job. These young men had good government jobs, GS-15. They got good jobs working for the man. But they still didn't lose that spirit of protest, because protest has political power. Protest also has theological power. These young men realized, I can't capitulate because my theological tenets that I hold to won't allow me to exchange a God created by a man to replace a God that created me. There is a war, my sisters and brothers, for your soul. The war for your soul is not in someone trying to rob you at gunpoint for your future. The war for your soul is in the amount of idols that are produced now in our society. You should see the way people act when the new such and such comes out, and the new this comes out. We have fallen prey to idolatry as these logos of major corporations function as a form of hypnosis. So when I see X, Y, and Z about to put something out, I got to have it. You can't explain what comes over you when you go to the store and buy that new thingamathing. What's at stake, my sisters and brothers, is our soul, is our collective soul, as many forces are vying for our loyalty. Now the question becomes, Are we going to worship the idols that we make? Or are we going to worship the God that made us? Now, that choice seems easy, sitting in church. But oh, when you go and hit the street, that choice becomes harder as people contend for your time and your energy. But what does protest do? Protest unlocks the power of our freedom by confronting idolatry. When you realize that the things that are trying to subsume and consume you are really made by the hands of other frail people, how can you continue to follow the frailty of failed people when God has never failed you yet? Is there anybody here who knows about a God that won't fail you? Men and women might fail you. The government might fail you. Systems might fail you. Your mama and daddy might fail you. But I know a God who slumbers and doesn't slumber and sleep. A God who watches over my affairs. A God that cares about me. So how am I going to exchange a stone or a gold or a platinum God for a God who spans the universe and comes down and still visits with us? Protest saved them and the people they love from idolatry, the one sin that brings about God's wrath without question. So protesting, my sisters and brothers, can save the life of this nation as it spins and careens out of control. Borrowing is at an all-time high. Our nation borrows to pay its bills. As we pump more money into weapons, our nation's headed in the backward state. And you and I, sisters and brothers, as we take agency and find power in protest, might find a way to help grab the wheel before we careen off the cliff of irrelevancy and find ourselves labeled amongst the group of people who were here once but are not here anymore. For our presence is not guaranteed. Ask our Native American sisters and brothers. Just because you are here today does not guarantee you here tomorrow. And your protesting is a theological imperative saying that the God I serve does not stand for this oppression. My sisters and brothers, protesting overcomes the power of death. Protesting overcomes the power of death. How is that so? When confronted with the opportunity to renege on their prior situation, the king says, I'm going to give you one more chance because I like you. I like you. I'm going to give you one more chance. And they say, oh, king, we can't do this. Now, we know that the penalty for disobedience is fire. The penalty for going against the song is death. We understand that and we accept that. But we believe that our God can deliver us. You can face death knowing that the same God who will meet you on the other side will meet you on this side too. So death becomes a tool not of oppression but of liberation, because once you kill me once, that's it. But the work that I do will live on and on. The songs that I sing will live on and on. But anyone can have confidence when you know God will bring you out. The part of the text that touches me, Reverend Norfleet, is this. They said, if God doesn't, if God doesn't deliver me, I still can't do this. Now, I want to know, what is it about a person that says, even if God doesn't bring me out, I'm still going to serve God because right is right and wrong is wrong. And I won't have my name listed among those who followed the way of idolatry. There has to be something inside of you. What are you living for? What's happening with us? Songs of the 70s said, revolution. Revolution went to let me just get a better job. The same folks with afros now, afros in the 70s are chilling now. Look, I got a mortgage. I got grandkids. All that revolution got to go on with y'all because I'm chilling and I'm tired. Understandably so. But the question is, what is going to galvanize us in such a way that we'll exercise our faith in God even if the outcome doesn't go the way we think? Even if it doesn't work out the way I think, I'm still going to serve the Lord. Even if you don't like me, I'm going to serve the Lord. Even if I lose friends or so-called friends, even if I can't go to the frat meeting no more, I'm still going to serve the Lord. There's something bigger than what's made by man's hand. So now the king says, okay, I want you to make the fire 7 times hotter to prove a point. Because the king said, what God is going to save you from my hand? What God is going to quench the fire that I have exponentially heated up for you? What God is going to save you from the punishment that I preset for those who are disobedient? And these young men walked into the yawning jaws of an inferno, bound hand and foot. Fire so hot, according to the text, that those who bound them died from the heat. They were thrown in to the fire. That should have been the end of the story, folks. It was a good run. They had it while they had it. We're going to pour out a libation for their struggle. But that's it. But I told you, protest has the power to counter death. They should have died already because they got a second chance. They turned the second chance down, were bound, hand and foot, thrown in the fire. That should have been the end of the story. When you protest, that's what should happen to you. That's it. But death can never conquer life because death is a part of life, and the God of life won't let death be the end of the story. What you mean, Jefferson? Bring it on home. I will, I will. At this point, it should be over. But as the people were looking in the fire, they were waiting on s'mores. They were waiting on ashes. Because surely if you rise up against imperial power, that should be the end of you. But instead, oppression caused them to add another person to their ranks. Can I talk about it? The king said, I looked inside. I saw 3, but there's another one in the fire. I threw in 3, but I ended up with 4. I got strange math going on. I got 3 people cooking, but there's 4 people walking. 3 people cooking, 4 people walking. What's going on? Woo! Now, there's some conjecture about who's in the fire. There's some debate about who is in the fire. Some scholars say that it was an angel. For at the time of the writing of this text, angels were prevalent in the literature of that day. So it could have been an angel. When we think about our life, we think about how people have shown up while we were engulfed in infernos of controversy and frustration and lying and deceit. And as the fire raged, something should have destroyed your character, destroyed your self-esteem, but there was somebody else with you. It may have been an angel. Thank God for angels. It may have been your neighbor, because when you're in trouble, God will send somebody in the midnight hour. When it gets tough, you'll find that you're not walking alone. Thank you to my grandmother for not letting me walk alone. Thank you for my prayer partners not letting me walk alone. There's got to be somebody in your life, when you look in the fire of your situation, that you see that you're not alone. But, yeah. I got an explanation for who might have been in the fire. Now, 3 were in. 4 walking around. Now, I see that liberation comes in the fire. That they were bound when they were thrown in. The physical chains of their invisible oppression were upon them. But the fire burnt up what was holding them to the point where they were able to walk around. I'm thinking if anybody was in that fire, it had to be Jesus. Because it's something about when you put yourself out there for the name of the Lord won't let you go out there for yourself. And Jesus will show up on your behalf. I know the Hebrew Bible scholars will say that's not Jesus in there. Well, I'm a Christian, and when I read the text and I see how God intervened in the actions of men, I believe that in the fires of my life, I know it was nobody but Jesus. I said nobody but Jesus. I said nobody but Jesus. I love Jesse Jackson, but it wasn't him. I love Al Sharpton. It wasn't him. I love Louis Farrakhan. It wasn't him. It was Jesus in the midnight hour. And why do I know it was Jesus? Because Jesus has a way of setting us free in the middle of the fire. Is there anybody here who said, I know what it's like to be set free in the fire? Lie on me if you want to. It's only going to get me loose. Hold me down if you want to. It's only going to make me free. It doesn't matter what you do to me, what you say to me, because I'm not in it alone. I'm not alone. Never alone. My sisters and brothers, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Jesus has a way of overturning the money changers' tables. Jesus has a way of riddling the Romans. Jesus had a way of confounding the Jews. Jesus had a way of circumventing power to set people free. So much so that the gospel writer said, he who the Son sets free. I thought I had a Bible reader here. He who the Son sets free is free indeed. Now, is there anybody here today who knows what it's like to be set free from some stuff? Is there anybody here who knows what it's like to be bound by drugs and bound by alcohol and bound by the pleasures of the flesh and bound by oppressive situations and felt yourself constricted to the point of death. But Jesus has a way of liberating those who don't even want to be liberated, because when he's in the building, you can't help but to get free. Now, I know some of you have been crying, and some of you have been sad, and some of you have been wondering, what's going on with this political situation? How are we going to make it as black people? What's our future going to be? What I can say is this. I fancy myself an amateur political scientist of the barbershop variety. So I don't have all the answers. But I do know this, my sister and my brother. If we don't engage in the power that we have to protest economically, politically, socially, if we don't engage and move on that power will be usurped. And we will find ourselves singing songs about heaven, because that will be the only inheritance we'll ever have. It's time out for the games. It's time out for people playing over black people just to cash the machine. I'm going to go do my black person dance, get this, and I'm out. I'm going to go do my thing over here, and I'm out. At some point, we've got to stiffen up our back as people and say, this ain't going to stand. I'm not waiting for my kids to end up in jail so I can visit them. I've got to put my foot down now. I need you. I beg you. I implore you to stiffen up your back. Stop singing songs about the 60s. The struggle's still going on. You better find a way. You better make a way. I'm begging for the survival of our people. I don't want to hear nobody else talking to me about Jesus if they're not talking about getting free. I stand here as your brother. I stand here as a minister of the gospel. I stand here as one subject to the same laws and society that you're under. And I stand here with hope, because every time I see us gather together as people, lifting the name of Christ, bonding together through the means of prayer, and engaged in action in the world, I know that my Redeemer liveth. And at the last, he shall stand upon the earth. And in my flesh, I will see God, and I will behold him and none other.